Hello, 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 and welcome to this live conversation. I am so thrilled to be with Marinela Profi from SAS, and we are going to dive into the world of, yes, artificial intelligence, generative AI. As an expert in AI, Marinela is the global AI and generative AI marketing strategy lead at SAS. Marinela has a wealth of experience at the intersection of data science, AI, right, artificial intelligence, and strategic marketing. And at SAS, I learned that Marinela is being instrumental at crafting global marketing strategies for cutting-edge AI solution. And I've seen Marinela on stage as well. During some of the major conferences that SAS holds in the US to actually help audiences, customers, prospects to really understand the power of artificial intelligence. Marinela is dedicated to shaping the future of technology within our industry, but also finance, retail, insurance. I mean, I'm an insurance gal, Marinela, so maybe we can talk a little bit about finance in insurance. But one of the motto I absolutely love about you is LLMs alone don't solve business problems. LLMs don't have reasoning capabilities, right? So welcome.
Hi, Sabine. It's a pleasure to be here in your podcast. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you here. So let's just get started and really understand who you are and what got you at SAS. A little bit of background is always helpful to actually help people place you and really understand the passion for marketing, strategy, and in AI.
Yeah, so I joined SAS in 2018. It's already been 6 years, which flew by. It's hard for me to believe that it's already been 6 years. I started in Italy. I am Italian, so I was working at SAS in Rome, in our Rome office. We have a beautiful office in Rome, and I was working there as a AI solutions engineer so helping our customers to analyze their data using AI and analytics to increase their business productivity and efficiency of their processes through automation, analytics, and AI. And then I moved into US in 2021, where I'm currently working at SAS headquarters in North Carolina, overseeing, as you said, the AI and generative AI marketing strategy for our AI and generative AI solutions. So I started my career with AI probably since high school. My major in high school was computer engineering. And so in Italy, they allow you to choose these majors, they're called, in high school. And I chose computer engineering and math. So I've always been the type of person that always loved numbers, always loved data, statistics. And so I continued my studies in that way. I worked as a data engineer for a couple of years, and then I joined SAS.
Congratulations. As you know, I've been doing quite an interesting set of initiatives with your team. And I actually love what you guys are doing. And also, again, I want to give a little bit of a shout out to Franklin, Manchester, and your wonderful team who actually helped me build, an event at Bayes Business School, formerly CAS, number 1 in actual science in Europe, number 2 globally. And we actually try to address the talent gap and help them really understand how a technology and a platform like SAS can help them actually enter and potentially, apply to the companies they're interested in, but really understanding practically what businesses are looking for today. Yeah. But I want to dive into the Generative AI Global Report that SAS published recently, Marinela.
Yes, let's do it.
Let's do it. And so my first question to you is, some of the findings for some may be surprising. And so, it's about understanding the impact of generative AI on all enterprises globally. And from your report, it seems that we are, some of the most significant findings that stood out for me was where are the data coming from and what are the emerging insights you have seen from the report?
Yeah, that's a great question to start from. So, the report interviewed 1,600 organizations, 16 different countries worldwide across all continents. So, and this was obviously on purpose because what we wanted the data to be as diverse and include as many voices, as many economists, as many countries as possible. And the real purpose of it was of the study was to analyze the adoption of generative AI. So understanding what organizations were investing their money on, what type of challenges they were facing, what they were looking to get out of generative AI. We all know that 2023 was probably the year of experimentation with generative AI, right? Since ChatGPT was launched in November 2022, everybody started putting money into this and started to understand the potential of it. And so through this study, we wanted to understand, okay, what are actually companies investing in and what use cases and what are some of the results, their initial results they're seeing. And probably a surprising fact that emerged from the data were a couple. The first one, definitely, that there is a difference. The top two players are China and the United States. So China, however, is leading the world in generative AI usage and adoption, right? So while the United States are leading full implementation. So 83% of Chinese organizations that interviewed said that they're using the technology, they're adopting it. So they're experimenting with it. They're trying use cases and seeing what works, what doesn't work. Then there is more. The second country to follow was the United Kingdom, so UK, then the US, and then Australia. So this was very interesting. However, organizations in the US, even though China is leading from an experimentation adoption standpoint, are ahead in terms of maturity and having fully implemented it. So the interesting part for me is that the study proved that higher adoption, higher experimentation doesn't necessarily equate to effective implementation of better returns. So China may lead in Gen AI adoption rates. However, the US is ahead in the race with 24% of the organizations that have fully implemented generative AI compared to quote unquote only 19% in China. And that is because moving from adoption to implementation is not an easy path. It comes with a lot of challenges. And the data prove this.
Yeah, fascinating. So, what I hear is there is generative AI implementation, because often when I speak to corporations and enterprises, there is still a fear to move from adoption to execution, as you said. So there is a lot of pilots taking place with, a lot of things staying on the shelf until, there is maybe some regulatory framework being set up to make sure that people, organization, executives, digital leaders, technology leaders are comfortable about implementing generative AI. But there is implementation, you are saying, in a number of markets.
There is, yes, there is implementation in a number of markets. Surprisingly so, banking is one of the top markets that is leading the implementation, right? Initially, so maybe you think, well, it's a very highly regulated industry, so they would be the one that probably would face the most challenges when implementing it. But actually, they're leading. It's one of the leading industries, right? In implementing generative AI. Yes. Obviously that changes across different countries, but overall, on average, banking is one of the top ones that is implementing it.
Superb to hear. But so to allow for this implementation, we need to understand how people feel, employees feel. And the report actually indicates that 89% of organizations report improved employee experience and satisfaction to generative AI, which is, counterintuitive, because there's so much fear. I read often about the usage of generative AI within corporate roles. So can you share some examples of how generative AI is enhancing employee engagement and employee satisfaction?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I love that you brought up, engagement, satisfaction, and fear. Because those are, we are truly living in this, and sometimes it feels like we're living in this binary narrative when it comes to generative AI, right? On the one side, the opportunities, on the other side, the risks and the fears that come out of it. And that is the same when it comes to employees as well. I'm one of them, right? I started using generative AI, and it truly allows organizations to enhance operational efficiency while improving employees' experience through more personalized, streamlined, accessible resources. So ultimately, what generative AI is doing at a high level, it's creating a more agile, responsive, and engaging workplace for employees. However, there are things that we need to be mentioning and need to be thinking about. The first is generative AI is not delivering the same value to all the employees. We have different kind of employees, right? From business users to business analysts to the data scientists to the IT people to the marketers. And so those are seeing different kind of benefits. And at the same time, they have to be aware of different kind of risks, and they are asking themselves different kind of questions. So to give you a few examples, business users, right? Generative AI for them is offering the potential for faster insights by allowing them to uncover trends in their dashboards, making their job easier through AI assistants to automatically generate dashboards based on conversational prompts. Right. The flip side of this is that the AI's answer might sound convincing, but how can the users and employees ensure their accuracy and prompt it more effectively, right? So while this has the potential to speed up their workflow, the challenges remain: will AI provide beneficial insights that make my job faster, or will it just be another gimmick, right? So it's that's on the business analyst, business user side. Data scientist, right? I started my career as a data scientist. Generative AI, it's really helpful to automate parts of the AI analytics lifecycle, from generating code to fine-tuning models to deploying models. However, can we trust the output without rigorous validation, without rigorous monitoring? When it comes to marketers, personalized, content generation and personalized marketing campaigns, idea generation. So we're seeing trends of AI powered brainstorming tools that can help employees generate ideas for projects, for marketing campaigns, or process improvements by providing creative prompts and relevant examples. And so overall, we are seeing generative AI helping teams to stay motivated by breaking out of creative ruts and fostering collaboration, leading to a more engaged workforce and encouraging a culture of innovation. And these are just some of the ways how generative AI can streamline the processes and reduce manual effort. However, we need to continue also to tell the stories of the other side. Like, what are the questions that we need to be asking ourselves as employees daily on the output that these tools generate, on how we can make sure that they are being compliant to our organization's policy. So yeah, the study is showing that people are excited and they're seeing benefits. And speaking from my own experience, I can confirm that. But on the other side, we also have to be mindful of, of the risks, the concerns, and that comes with this. And I think that's where the organization's, training and continuous feedback loop from the employees really, really can make a difference.
Yeah, I so much agree. I mean, in my role working with organizations like yours and working with financial institutions, regulation is critical, and so making sure we do not damage our reputational risk or create any reputational risk is critical. And so, like you, I have a policy where let's try what text, different text platform means for us, different video platform or picture platform. But as you said, you need that human in the loop to make sure that everything we do is actually monitored and evaluated to make sure that the information is right, because the platform still hallucinate. Which takes me to a governance and compliance challenge, actually. And I think from the research, we saw that with 95% of business lacking a comprehensive governance framework for generative AI, what potential risk do you see when you work with those organizations all the time, Marinela, and how do they develop effective governance structures and strategies?
Yeah, this is a loaded question, right? Governance to me is, and maybe we'll talk more about this as we go. It's one of the top challenges for really making the difference between being a winner or failing with generative AI, having governance in place. And so risks that when you don't have governance frameworks in place, and as you said, the report is showing that actually the majority of organizations are not thinking about a governance framework in place, there's a lot of risks that you can take and you are incurring. First of all, there's ethical risks. I always start with that, right? Because I think when we are interacting with these gigantic, very smart artificial brains, the large language models, there is bias and discrimination and misinformation that can come from it. And so without proper oversight, without proper governance, generative AI can perpetuate or even amplify biases present in the training data. Because at the end of the day, we don't know on what training data these models are being trained. So it could lead to unfair outcomes, potentially discriminatory practices, spread of false information, which can damage brands' reputation, undermine public trust. We are seeing, now the big topic of the moment is elections, right? And there is a whole project that it's actually tracking the usage of AI globally, not just in US. This is the year where the number, the biggest numbers of countries are holding elections for the first time in human history. And so AI is being used, generative AI is being used worldwide in either sharing information that is right, or creating that positive engagement, or misinformation. And so governance allows to make sure that we are not incurring into these ethical concerns. In addition to ethical concerns, the lack of governance brings compliance and legal issues. So you can have data privacy violations, right? You can have intellectual property risks. Then also security vulnerabilities. So insufficient governance can make AI systems very vulnerable to attacks. And such as, for example, inputs that manipulate outputs, which can compromise the system security of the entire organization. And so keeping in mind all this, I think if you asked about what steps they can take to develop effective governance framework for generative AI, there are a few things that I always recommend in my advising, as an AI advisor. The first is to start establishing clear policies and guidelines. So define usage standards. I know this might sound so easy and taken for granted, but sometimes we're so excited in jumping into experimenting. We have the use case that it's very clear on what we want, that we forget to create detailed policies that outline acceptable use cases for generative AI, not acceptable use cases. At SAS, we created a list on not just here are the things where you can use it, but most importantly, here are the things where you cannot use it. Right? So that usage standards is a nice way to start your governance framework, establishing clear processes and guidelines. Implementing monitoring and auditing processes. So conduct regular audits of AI systems to evaluate compliance with, assessing proper data usage in real-time monitoring as well. And then we always, I think, don't talk enough about this, which is the culture. In the generative AI era, as we're talking about employees being excited about this, but also there is risks, there is opportunities. A big part is fostering a culture of accountability, okay? Like never before. So clearly outline and define roles, responsibilities for AI governance, ensuring that all stakeholders understand their accountability in managing AI risks. And so I think that it's a big part as well.
So, I mean, those are super important risks, right? You have listed. And I think a lot of organizations still working out how to make sure that they create that level of freedom, creative freedom from their team, but at the same time have the right guardrail to make sure we don't have ethical, reputational risk, regulatory risk by leveraging the wrong data. I'm going to say the wrong data. As an example, one of the rules I have in my organization is, for sure, for marketing, let's just use generative AI to help write an article, find some ideas, do some research, but there's no way we can actually input any client data on those platforms. So that is a very much coded rules in the organization, and people would be fired if actually they didn't respect that rule. So how do we achieve compliance when I think another big statistic from the report is only 10% of organizations feel fully prepared to comply with the upcoming generative AI regulations?
Yeah. Well, first of all, what are the upcoming generative AI regulations, right?
Yes, different in different.
Like if you go back in 2016, we probably had one or two just in the US, I'm talking. And today, like 2023, there were like 20 plus, right? And there is like hundreds of cases that are currently being submitted for evaluation as law. And probably some of them are not going to pass. Some of them will pass. So the regulatory environment is changing so much. And this is another area where organizations are struggling, honestly, because they're like, I might build a technology in-house today that might be, in a few years might become illegal, right? And not compliant anymore. Well, first of all, I would start by saying I work in technology. So to me, the most important thing for me and the advice that I give to my clients is purchase technology that is built with compliance by design. That is the most important thing, right? So one of the reasons why I work at SAS and I choose every day to work at SAS is that is a company that has been in the market for almost 50 years, delivering successful AI implementation to some of the most highly regulated industries in the world, not just in the US, but in the world. And so we know a thing or two about compliance and so and building compliant technology, right? And so to me, bringing in-house a technology that it already has established data management protocols that outline how the data is collected, stored, processed, that ensures compliance with data privacy regulations, that allows you to implement access controls, that allows you to implement documentation standards, et cetera, around AI models, data sources, and how decisions are being made to enhance accountability and traceability. That is something that technology plays a big role in delivering, right? If you have the right technology that it's built with compliance by design, a lot of the effort is going to be taken away from organizations' shoulders in being compliant. It's going to be reduced. So it's going to contribute to that compliance readiness. And obviously, as the regulatory landscape evolves, the technology evolves as well, right? The technology that SAS used to deliver in the 80s is not the same that is today because it has evolved to make sure that it complies with the current regulatory landscape. And so our customers are sure that they're buying a technology that will help them and will allow them to have the tools to create data management policies, access controls, etc. So that is one thing, the technology. The second piece for me is the crisis management procedures. What does that mean? Create a plan for responding to compliance violations or data breaches involving generative AI. And ensure that all employees are aware of their roles in the event of an incident, right? I think that it's also something that it's part of the risk management part of it. So these are some of the things that come to my mind.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing those. And what I hear is, organizations have to be prepared to invest in the technology. And, if we want to drive that competitive advantage and, we talk about the fourth industrial revolution. Some people think with generative AI, we are moving to the fifth, right? So when we start looking at digitization and competitive advantage, we understand everybody looking at artificial intelligence and generative AI. So, but at the same time, again, I'm going to use another number from the study, considering that 93% of senior tech decision makers do not fully understand generative AI and its potential. How do you and your team enhance this understanding and help them really get to understand the risk? And I love the statement, compliance by design. How do they really understand how to educate, how to get prepared, how to get compliant, how to use the right technology?
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, I would start from your statistics that you shared, because I think that really opens up a great topic. 93% of senior tech decision makers do not fully understand generative AI or its potential impact, while they're putting a lot of money into it, right? They're allocating budget they already have, or they have planned to allocate budget for next year. And so that it's huge, right? So how important it means that it's just so important for leadership to enhance their understanding. And the reason why it is important is because, and this might sound a little unpopular opinion or something, but I believe, and this is just Marinela's opinion, the next 5 years will really determine which organizations succeed in the Gen AI powered economy and which one fall behind. And the reality is that the future won't be kind to organizations that fail to act on this. We've seen this story before, right? Think back to the digital transformation wave of the early 2000s. Companies that embraced the internet, digitized their processes, invested in e-commerce, became the big tech companies of today. Meanwhile, those that waited or followed the wrong adoption path either adapted too late or disappeared entirely. So similarly, organizations that fail to act now will find it very increasingly difficult to compete in the generative AI powered economy, because this is not just another trend, it's the next leap in business evolution, right? And so organizations and decision makers, they understand it and move decisively, will be the one to shape the future of their industry. Not acting now, sometimes I get the question, well, what if I don't do anything? What if I don't act? What could happen? Well, that future for those who fail to act and the decision makers that don't take time to understand the technology today is not just about losing ground. It's about becoming irrelevant. So the cost of inaction in generative AI is irrelevance. If you don't adopt generative AI, someone else will. They will attract your customers. They will streamline processes that you've left inefficient. They will create products that you've never imagined. They will do that and not you. So it's super critical for leadership to understand generative AI, because those who understand it can make informed decisions strategically that can increase their business innovation and resiliency and make their business, future ready. So how they can increase the understanding of generative AI? Well, besides the more traditional quote unquote things like taking formal training, attending workshops, seminars, reading books, research papers, etc., to me, the number one tip is develop hands-on experience. If you want your employees to do something, you have to lead by example. So start using generative AI in whatever form, right? It could be to take a picture of your fridge and ask to give you a recipe for dinner at home, or whether you want to participate as a leader in pilot AI projects to gain practical experience and better understand the technology's impact on business processes. I hugely encourage this. The leaders that I work with, that are not super technical or that are technical, involving them into piloting AI projects internally. And also encouraging, I think another one that it's proving to a lot of value, it's encouraging internal sessions of data exploration. Basically, you provide opportunities for leaders to work with small data sets in generative AI tool to develop hands-on understanding of generative AI application. And I think that is super cool because it puts everybody in the room at the same level and saying, we're all going through this. We all don't know this. We're all going to work together to develop hands-on experience.
It's interesting, right? Because ChatGPT came out in November 2022. However, I know you have been working on generative AI model LLMs for many years before that announcement, right? Things didn't come out of the rude worms in November 2022. But myself, like you said, I've been playing with it for the past 2 years. And probably what I did 2 years ago is very different from what I can do today, just because I've become a much more flexible prompt writer, knowing, how to build with a little bit of an engineering mind, a decent statement to get the right outcome. And as you said, now the tools is not just about writing or audio or videos. It is actually helping you define strategies, product strategy, marketing strategies, pretty much any strategies across your whole operation. So, from moving from conceptual ideas to what you said, right? We need to move to adoption and we need to move to implementation. What strategies and best practices you have seen or you would recommend for business to start considering to overcome this hurdle, right, of not doing anything and then hopefully measuring ROI and seeing that there is a result from trying those capabilities?
Well, I could speak for an hour just to this question, first of all. As you said, the past year and a half for me, it's been all about talking to customers and doing use cases and seeing, what works, what doesn't work, and really diving into use cases. And I think that we are starting to see a little bit of a generative AI or an AI divide, as I like to call it, right? Where we're seeing organizations that are winning and organizations that are failing with it. And I do believe that there are some guiding principles for winning with generative AI that I have learned in the past year and a half only. The first one is that your generative AI apps and applications or whatever you're building are only as valuable as the data you feed them. That's it. So AI needs good data. Generative AI, especially generative AI, brings a whole new set of challenges with data, right? All the challenges that we had with structured data, right? Take rows and columns, they have been augmented so much more with LLMs now. Unstructured data bring a whole new set of challenges with data. And so they contain noise, they contain duplications, ambiguity that can increase compute and storage costs and skew results. And so we're seeing that organizations, the number one tip I have always as a guiding principle is be brave enough to start with fixing data issues and invest in your data infrastructure first, right? Because you're going to have problems with that in the future otherwise. And I always say that, I find it funny how no matter what the latest technology advancement is, whether it is Hadoop, whether it is the cloud, big data, now generative AI, we always go back to talk about data.
I knew I was going to say that. Yes, we go back to the data.
Always go back to that data. And so sometimes people ask me, what do you think is going to change in the next 5 years? And I'm like, I think we should ask ourselves, what do you think is not going to change? What do you think is going to remain the same in the next 5 years? Try to think about it. I believe our problems with data quality are still going to be there in the next 5 years. There are going to be even more of them. And so number one piece, guiding principle, invest in the data infrastructure, invest in the data quality right now, like start with it. And the second, prioritize governance, responsible AI usage. We talked a little bit about this before already, so I don't want to spend too much time into it, but just be prepared to have a plan for governing trustworthy AI. The third is, you said it before the beginning, my quote, LLMs alone do not solve business problems. This is a lesson that we have learned in the past year and a half. Generative AI is really powerful. It's here to stay. However, large language models are nothing more than a functionality and a capability that can augment your existing business processes. But still, you need, first of all, to apply them to the right use case. You need then to integrate them within your existing business processes, right? And you need to integrate them with other analytics that you have been doing in the past years. Like if you might have a a prediction algorithm. You might have an algorithm that classifies something, or an algorithm that it's a computer vision model. You're not going to throw those out. And those are still the analytical brain of your organization. The LLM, it's adding a conversational layer on top of it. The LLM allows you to have a conversation, whether it's written or by voice, with your analytical engine that it's running in the background. So how many, how many customers did I gain in the past month and why? The LLM gives you a reply, but in the back end, you have an algorithm that it's analytical algorithm, that it's AI algorithm. It's not the LLM that it's running your data. And then the LLM is returning you the response in a way that you understanding, in a way that you can make decisions out of it. So it's a conversational interface layer. It doesn't solve business problems. You still need humans. You still need infrastructure, architecture, conversations, and a lot of other pieces to make it work. And last but not least, sorry, you want to add something?
No, I thought this is beautiful because, we often talk about the fact that, the fear we talked about earlier. At the end of the day, if you actually really understand how those LLM works, it's all about augmenting the individual. And so, the fear of losing a job should not be there, but we need to augment our role and start learning how to use those stuff. And so, as you said, you have the AI and you have all the data being massaged with the machine learning algorithm, but then the generative AI is moving the technology angle to the business. So it's a translator, right? It's a translator to make our job much faster. And so people should not be scared, because as long as we are creative, we know how to solve problems, and we need to make the right decision. So know how to make decision from the information, then those tools are capabilities to augment our role.
Absolutely. Yes. And I'm hearing lately to say, there is this debate right now going on in the market, whether LLMs can reason or not reason, right? They have reasoning or not reasoning capabilities. There are people who say they're just predictors of the next word. And there are people that say, no, they can actually reason like humans because they show chain of thought, right? They show how they're getting into an output and what steps are taken to take into an output. I have my own opinion of it, but I think what really matters here is not what I think, who's wrong is right. I think is the fact that human reasoning has a certain definition, and the way human reason is completely different than the way LLMs reason. Whether you want to call it reasoning or not reasoning, it's different. So we probably should go back to how we defined reasoning, because if we are measuring these models with the same way we measure and we define human reasoning, then they don't reason. But who said that human reasoning is the only one that it's right? Maybe they have their own way of reasoning, which complements our way of reasoning and making us more productive, right? So they take out of our reasoning the more, mundane and the more time-consuming things, allowing us to enhance our own human reasoning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's about integrating things as part of our lives, right? And playing with it. And the reasoning question is an interesting one, because I've been playing with O1 preview. And yes, I'm wondering whether it's reasoning or it is actually just regurgitating the information in different ways. But actually, it's different as to whether we give it a lot of data, so a lot of reports, right? I love giving it 10 reports of a company's annual reports and then see what's coming out of it. And then it's like, okay, maybe a little bit of shift in strategy going on here. So let's talk about use cases, because we know that SAS is renowned for trustworthy AI. And, some of the experience I've had with your team around the actual science, for instance, within insurance, showed me that, by really understanding how to use those capabilities and actually question the AI and the generative AI to come with some superb conclusion to decide what products or services to come out to market and, what new insurance product to launch. What are the use cases you see are going to have the most impact on industry. I mean, I talk to health company, finance company, insurance companies, and then functionally, you know, we talked about marketing. I'm comfortable with trading and risk assessment. So where do you see we can get the most value from this?
Well, the use cases, first of all, experimentation is happening across so many use cases. Where I'm seeing some use cases that have brought value has been, first, one use case is in the risk modeling for the personal loans. So for when it comes to banking and finance and insurance, what we're doing is basically using let me start by saying this. When we talk about generative AI, we always talk about just large language models, right? Everybody thinks about that. But there is another application of generative AI, which is known as synthetic data, that is proving to be very, very, very good at enhancing processes and models' performance in predicting or classifying for certain use cases. SAS we're making a big investment in synthetic data. We launched in private preview recently our new solution, SAS Data Maker, that allows you to generate synthetic data in a low code, no code way. And this is already proving value. For example, the way for unsecured personal loans, right? The way that we help the customer basically is utilizing synthetic data generation for classifying the risk of default for unsecured personalized loans for individuals. And the fascinating part of this is that adding synthetic data to the process, not just using the traditional techniques with the currently existing data, but adding the synthetic data led to a lower end estimate of 28% improvement in the model's capability to classify and to model the risk for unsecured personal loans. And you might be saying, okay, 28% better in classifying. Let me add this, 28% improvement in classifying, just thanks to the synthetic data, led to a 10.3 million reduction in losses for personal loans for the bank. And so for the insurance company. So this just shows how small, incremental improvements can lead to big savings in terms of economic savings. So this is one use case. So risk modeling for unsecured personalized loans, applying synthetic data. Synthetic data also is being applied to fraud detection in real time. Speaking about your area, insurance and banking, fraud detection is a big one. What is happening in the fraud space is that we have a lot of non-fraudulent cases, because fortunately, we have fraud cases, but the majority is not fraudulent, right? So if you take your customer base, probably you have, let's say, 80% that are not fraudulent, and you have those 20% or 10% that are fraudulent. Now, traditional modeling techniques, they struggle in being really good in detecting fraud cases by being trained only on that 10 or 20% of fraud. And so you can generate synthetic fraud cases, and you can use synthetic data to generate even the most complicated fraud cases, right, that come up every day, and feed those to the model. So you have a model that becomes really smart in detecting every type of fraud case, right? Even fraud cases that you might not have had in your company historically, but synthetic fraud cases allowed you to give the model the capability to detect those fraud cases, right? And so it generates more fraud cases and increase the model's accuracy in detecting even the more rare fraud types.
So, I mean, it would be great if you can actually explain synthetic data, because I understand what it is, but I think it's very important to actually reconnect people smiling around talking about synthetic data. And the second part of this is, how do we prevent bias and discrimination? Because we are creating a synthetic data component here.
Absolutely. So think of synthetic data as literally generated data. So starting from your real world data, you generate synthetic data that have similar statistical characteristics of your real world data. So it doesn't change the patterns and the relationships that are in your customer base, in your data set. What it does, synthetic data, is used in those scenarios, for example, where in your real world data, you have private or sensitive information that you cannot share. So you generate a synthetic version of your data that does not have those sensitive information, but still maintains the characteristics of your data. So for example, if you're a marketing company and you want to build campaigns, let's say, right? And in your real world data, you have that, for example, Sabine, who lives in Europe, spends this much in this street, in this zip code, spends this much energy per month, right? And spends more than Marinela, who lives in the United States. You can build a targeting campaign, right, that targets Sabine or targets Marinela, but that's not legal because that is private information. Marketing campaigns should be built on overpopulation. So what you can do if you're an energy company that wants to create a marketing campaign, you can create a synthetic version of your customer base that eliminates my name, your zip code, but still keeps the information that people in Germany in certain zip codes consume more energy than people in United States without having to disclose the first name, last name. So first of all, synthetic data is a great tool to protect sensitive information, private information, and to address bias. Because if you have a data set that it's more skewed towards men than women, you can generate synthetic data in women and complement your real world data set so that you balance the discriminating variable, right? The gender or the race or the religion. So it's actually a great tool that it's used to address biases, synthetic data. Those scenarios where you have real world data, and this is very important in healthcare. So certain cancers, we don't have a lot of data for men or a lot of data for women. And so you can use synthetic data to generate more data that for certain patients, you might have only a small percentage. You augment your existing data set so that the model that you train is not good in just detecting a certain disease for men and not good for women, but it becomes in detecting it no matter what your gender is.
That's fascinating. So, as we reach toward the end of our conversation, I would like to address 2 points because I'm sure this is going to come to mind to a lot of the, executives and individuals listening to our conversation. How do we start overcoming the talent and skill scarcity, which affect everybody globally? Again, another stats from the report is 51% of the organization are concerned about the lack of in-house skills to use generative AI effectively. And you mentioned, the risk, reputational risk, and all the different things we need to think as executives within an organization, but we need to bridge that talent gap. So how do we build those necessary skills and expertise?
Well, this is a question of the moment, right? And there are different ways where you can do this. First of all, I always start with culture. The first thing that we did at SAS when this whole generative AI thing started, and other companies did it as well, is establishing center of excellences internally, generative AI center of excellence, and not just a generative AI center of excellence company-wide, but we have generative AI center of excellence for different departments. So we have our marketing generative AI center of excellence, our IT generative AI center of excellence, our R&D center of excellence, and so on. So by department, having a group of people that always brings new idea or always takes challenge the status quo and tests use cases. I am part, for example, at SAS of the Marketing Generative AI Center of Excellence. And with a group of colleagues, we are collecting information on how the marketing organization is using what generative AI tools, what results, with what outputs, and trying to understand if it's worth it for our marketing organization to adopt certain tools, if they're effective, and most importantly, doing that in a trustworthy way. This request came directly from our CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, Jennifer Chase. She's incredible, has always been open to our making sure that her organization is at the forefront of innovation. And so one of her first way as a leader to empower her people in embracing these technologies and her employees to get trained is giving us free access, open to educational content, whether it is, online learning tutorials, online workshops and courses, and establishing the center of excellence that would act as a body internally that would go to employees and take that feedback mechanism. People want to be heard. People want to be listened, want to be asked on what they're using, why do they want to continue using it, is it being helpful, is it not being helpful to your job? And so that is the first way to embrace and foster those skills. You're always going to have some people in your organization, and this is just human nature, that just driven by their curiosity are going to start developing certain skills faster, right? Use those people, leverage those people to influence the rest of the organization, bring in external expertise. We're having a training sessions with analysts, right? Where we're paying external analysts to come in and say and teach or the relevant skills and helping us understanding where the market is going, where are the market trends, where are the market needs. And so it's something that always comes from leadership. All those marketing, the skills training to me comes from leadership, fostering a culture of curiosity, of innovation. And I mean, that's how every technology has been built at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very important to highlight that leadership culture, innovation needs to play, and the world is moving to probably faster pace around how we need to adopt innovation. So my last question to you, Marinela, is going to combine a couple of things I think which is important for us to address. First, I believe you have 4 key elements, right? You outline in the report to achieve success with generative AI: comprehensive governance, strategic development, technological integration, and expert guidance. And you have talked across our conversation around those 4 pillars. Now, share with us, what are your unique advantages of SAS Viya to actually drive those 4 pillars to actually achieve results and success for companies out there?
Thanks for this question. So SAS Viya is our cloud-native data and AI platform that basically allows organizations across different industries to execute faster and in a more performant way all the tasks across the entire data and AI lifecycle, from accessing any type of data source, ingesting it, manipulating it, and now analyzing it, building any kind of model with it, whether it is with structured data, unstructured data, different kind of use cases. And then we talked about that monitoring, governance, deployment, all the way up to making a decision. So think of SAS Viya as that, technology that brings you that ecosystem of applications that allow you to go from a question to a decision in a way that is transparent, ethical, trustworthy, built with compliant, trustworthy AI by design. Our unique advantages and differentiators, I would start by saying that, first of all, our almost 50 years of experience in developing and implementing AI across some of the most highly regulated industries. At the end of the day, the success is measured by the ability of a company to make the right decisions and either reduce their costs, increase their customer experience, or increase their revenues. And sometimes companies need to do these things, the 3 things at the same time. And the experience that we have put into building the ecosystem of applications that compose SAS Viya truly have embedded all those years of experience of SaaS operating in highly industry. So have an understanding of the context. There are algorithms that are embedded in our platform that are specifically targeting and tackling industry use cases, right? And have that industry and context knowledge. Second, the governance piece, the integration with different tools and open source. Sometimes, people, when they think about SaaS, they think about not open source. In the past years and with Viya, we have worked to open our platform to welcome languages like Python, like R. We want all our users, SaaS users, open source users, to work together and have the technology, have the platform, have Vaya become the unifier and the common denominator of their work, rather than helping them to break those silos that usually happen with adopting disparate tools and technologies these days. And so we talked about that. We talked about the governance. Trustworthy AI is a big, huge piece for us. In July this year, I'm very proud of the work that our data ethic practice team did in releasing model cards. What is a model card? Is a nutrition label for models. So think about when you go to a grocery store, you buy food, you read a nutrition label, what's in it, what are nutrition values. Think of having that same kind of information for a model, for an AI model. And that's what a model card allows our users and our customers to do. So read about who built that model, when, what are the biases included in it? What are the ethical concerns that it's bringing up? Is it compliant? Is it not compliant with some regulations? Is it discriminating any specific category or any specific variable? All these informations for allowing customers to build that famous framework of governance that we talked about before, with trustworthiness in mind. So I try to summarize as much as possible all the huge benefits of Vaya.
And I need to echo something you said, because that is a question that has been asked of me. So financial institution, insurers out there, reinsurers out there, Python and R are within SAS Vaya. So I'm just going to leave it there because the question has been asked of me recently. So Marinela, recommendation. So how do we harness generative AI for good? What are your top 3 tips? The last question of mine for today.
Top 3 tips. Well, take action now. I go back to that, right? If you haven't started yet, start. The future of those who fail to act or take action is going to be, about becoming relevant. You mentioned it before. This technology is not here to replace us. This technology, people might be replaced by other people who use this technology. That's what we're already seeing, right? So take action now. Start harnessing generative AI, and choose. I want to close with this. Choose the right partner. Choose the right partner, the right technology partner, one that knows the industry that you operate in. We are seeing new shiny startups being founded literally every day. Who knows when they're going to be 5 years? I wish them the best. If I was an entrepreneur CEO, honestly, I would be very cautious in building my entire AI strategy on, I want to have a right partner, a technology partner that I know has that industry expertise, has a data and AI expertise, has done that in the past, because partnership in this era where it's so fast changing, it's the number 1 key. I'm going to leave with that.
Thank you so much, Marinela Profi, for joining me today. And thank you for those great recommendations.
Thank you so much.